Down to the Wire is on the air. Kevin Rogers with you here on Vegas Insider, and very excited for show number 2 tonight. And we'll be talking plenty of NFL. Chris Farley is going to join us in just a few minutes, and he is of the 33rd team. It's an incredible website. They really are. They've really gone, excuse the term, balls deep into the NFL. They have former coaches, executives. Chris is the head of NFL betting. It's just there's a lot of NFL content they have there. Really excited to talk to him about that project and also his thoughts on some week 1 games. The NFL, we're only a few weeks away from week 1, so we'll talk to Chris in just a few moments. Also, we have our best bets for Major League Baseball. We had a trip to Splitsville last night, not only in our 2 sides, but also our 2 props. So good news is we didn't lose. Bad news is we didn't win, but start again tonight. We'll have some picks coming up in just a little bit, look at the Major League Baseball board. But before we do all of that, I want to tell you about Bet365 and a great promo right now ongoing at Bet365. Vegas Insiders teamed up with Bet365 to offer new users an amazing welcome offer. Bet365 Sportsbook is offering an exclusive bonus. Customers can bet $1 and get $200 in free bets. Users must use the code NJVIP at sign-up and be located in a legal betting state where Bet365 is licensed. Again, for new users only, full terms and conditions apply. That is Bet365. All right, let's get it going as we will bring on a man who is very much immersed in the NFL. He finished 5th, in fact, in the Circa last year. We'll talk about the contest as well with him, but that is Chris Farley, who is joining us here on Down to the Wire. And Chris, of the 33rd team, welcome. And also tell us about how you got to the 33rd team. So I know that happened just recently.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Great to be back here on Vegas Insider, as always. To be honest with you, I wish I had all the intel as to why I was chosen. Maybe it was the Circa win. Maybe it's just my history, betting records or whatever. But Josh Larkey, our director of content at the 33rd team, he found me, sent me a DM, and here we are today. It's myself and Ryan Reynolds. So we have Chris Farley and Ryan Reynolds, who knew, working at the 33rd team at the co-heads of as the co-heads of betting over there. I'm really excited about that project, Kevin, because it's all NFL, owned by previous NFL owners and presidents. We have NFL players, GMs, ex-coaches, all contributing with written content, video content. We have a new tool that's coming out that I think is really going to be state-of-the-art. That's really going to help NFL bettors and fantasy players understand things on a deeper level than ever. And, of course, we've been writing articles and getting a lot of content out as we prepare for the season. So I'm extremely excited. I love sports betting. I've been really fortunate to be really sharp in the NBA so far in my career, but the NFL is really my number one passion. So to be able to work for an NFL company, an NFL content and betting company, is just extremely exciting for me. So I appreciate you bringing that up, man.
I'm curious about this, Chris, that you have a lot of names. I've seen Wade Phillips. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike Tannenbaum, is he with you too?
Yep, he's one of the owners of the site. Yep.
Oh, okay. So you have these former NFL coaches, GMs, and all of that. A, have you interacted with them at all? And B, I guess it's a two-way street because you want a little more football intel from them, and they probably want gambling intel from you.
Probably. I mean, I don't know if that's true yet, if they want gambling information from me, but when you have names like a Wade Phillips in there, Brett Favre signed with the team, Michael Vick, Bill Parcells, who's really, if we're talking about sports lore and history, and one of the figures in sports and in the NFL that I look up to more than almost anyone, it's Bill Parcells, because I'm a huge Giants fan. So to see these names that are joining the 33rd team is incredible. I do get a chance to be on one meeting per week. Now, I'm not like on camera necessarily interacting with any of them just yet, but we are privy to some really great insider content, obviously insight that you really can't beat anywhere else, right? Because it's coming from former players and GMs and coaches. And they're talking about the latest topics in the NFL, like, the Kyler Murray debacle with his contract and all that's going on there. Deshaun Watson, all the big stories coming out of camp and during the preseason. We're all over it as soon as the news comes out. And I dare say, we probably have more, star contributors there than almost any site that I see out there, especially as far as NFL content goes. So it's really just exciting to be a part of it. Have not interacted with them just yet, but I really hope that's down the road.
Now, the NFL preseason, Chris, is wrapping up this week, and thankfully, we only have 3 weeks, not 4 weeks of this anymore. And I know it's very difficult to handicap the third week, but what have you picked up at all from the first 2 weeks of the preseason, if anything, to apply towards the regular season?
Yeah, obviously there's some great players that we can see, or potentially great players, right, that have showed themselves and kind of surprised a few of us in the preseason. I wasn't surprised that Kenny Pickett is looking as good as he does in Pittsburgh. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles that go into that, right? I mean, he played for Pittsburgh, right? He played for Pitt. That's where he played all of his college basketball. It's a dream come true for him to be with the Steelers. The Steelers don't really have a quarterback except Mitch Trubisky, but I think there's probably a decent chance that maybe they give Kenny Pickett a chance to start in week 1. I'm not sure what's going to actually happen with that. There's some chatter around it. I'm not sure what the official play is going to be there anyway. But what I've been saying more than anything, as far as betting and handicappers go, it's really essential that we actually try to ignore the preseason as much as possible. And I know that's really hard because we're all really excited about the upcoming NFL season. It's obviously good to see some of the starters out there looking healthy, right? That's a good sign, right? If some of the starters look good. There's some quarterback competition, right? I mean, in Carolina, I guess that's over now, in Seattle, but it's just, for the most part, the players that play in the preseason are, for the majority of these games are fighting for a roster spot, right? So these aren't the guys that you can expect to make a big influence on the lines as soon as the regular season starts, right? So for the most part, we have to try to ignore the NFL preseason from a betting perspective. Focus on what we know about the NFL from last year. Focus on the very limited time that we see the starters that are on the field in the preseason, but it's not that much, right? We can get excited about some of these rookies, right? Like Pickens, right? The Steelers wide receiver, he's been all over the highlights. Some of these better guys, Damian Pierce on the Houston Texans looks good, right? We can cherry pick some of these rookies and young players who look better than advertised, but at the end of the day, how much are they going to actually contribute? Week 1, when, full crowd capacity at these stadiums, right? Starters on both sides of the field, emotions are going to be high. You can't be too surprised if a lot of these guys that you see perform really well in the preseason don't perform as well once they get on the field. So I know it's kind of a, counterintuitive thing to think about, but I try to ignore any hot takes from the preseason as much as possible, because I would say more often than not, that's going to lead you away from some of the sharper perspectives that you probably should have, heading into week 1.
Now, taking a look at week 1, Chris, and we'll get to the Steelers in just a second. You mentioned Kenny Pickett, but I want to start with a couple games. The first game of the season, the Bills and the Rams on that Thursday night at SoFi Stadium. Rams won the Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium, holding off the Bengals, and now they're an underdog against the Bills, where Buffalo, Super Bowl favorites, thought to now be the team to get over the hump this year after what happened in Kansas City in overtime, that devastating loss they had in the second round last year. But the line moves towards Buffalo. They're a short favorite on the road. What are your thoughts on that opening game to start the season?
Yeah, I agree with that line movement. The Bills coming off that huge, really disappointing, really heartbreaking loss last year in the NFL playoffs in the divisional round against the Chiefs. Most of us probably remember that because it was such a crazy ending to that game, right? The Bills did not get a chance to go down the field with their offense. Again, we can't get overly hyped about the preseason, but you couldn't help but be impressed by how healthy and how proficient that Bills offense looked already in their second preseason game. I think they're going to be really pumped. They're going to be really poised for this first game in week 1. And let's face it, Matthew Stafford, he's trying to play down this nagging elbow injury, right? But I would argue, besides a shoulder or a hand injury, there's probably not a worse injury to have as a quarterback than an elbow injury, especially week 1 going against the Buffalo Bills defense that was very good last year, top 5 in a lot of categories. I think the line movement towards the Bills is correct. It's still at -2.5, so you're getting it under that key number of 3. So I would have to lean to the Bills in week 1. Unsure how many units or if that's going to be an official play for me. It's going to be a great battle, right? It should be. I mean, it's former Super Bowl champs opening up the game at home in LA. But I think the Bills are going to come out with a vengeance, and I think they're going to be highly motivated in that game. Not that the Rams aren't, but we see it all the time, right? Returning champions, they come home, there's a trophy, there's rings, there's pomp and circumstance. Sometimes it takes the focus away from the game, or maybe there's an assumption that they're going to win. The Rams better not come into that game with that mentality, or I think, it's almost a guarantee that they're going to lose, because the Bills, I think, are going to be hyper-focused.
And we saw last year with the Buccaneers, they struggled in that first game against the Cowboys. They were huge favorites. They ended up beating them, didn't cover. But now the Rams, an underdog. You don't get that often. The defending Super Bowl champion at home is an underdog in week one. Now, going to the Sunday games, Chris, 49ers and the Bears at Soldier Field, and you have two young quarterbacks there, Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And San Francisco, a touchdown favorite. Your thoughts in the game, but also what are your thoughts, too, with Trey Lance now overtaking Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that's a mistake by the 49ers. Now, if they want to win now, that's a mistake, I should say. Trey Lance, TBD, right? It's really kind of unknown how good he's going to be in the NFL. A lot of smart people, a lot of coaches, GMs, scouts, they love his skills, right? They love his mentality. He's got all the physical attributes, but he really hasn't proved that week by week he can carry the San Francisco 49ers team into the promised land. He definitely has some great physical and mental attributes, but I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit with Trey Lance. That being said, this is an offense right under Shanahan who's going to go over to Chicago, and I think they might be facing the least talented roster in the NFL. I feel so bad for Justin Fields, because it's probably going to be another really tough year for the Bears, where Justin Fields is fighting over and over and over again to keep the Bears in these games, right? A lot of passing downfield. And what a lot of people don't talk about is this San Francisco defense. They're healthy, they're prime. They probably have one of the best front sevens, if not the best in football. I don't see how the Bears are going to score against their defense. And as long as Shanahan, creates some comfortable, easy schemes for Trey Lance, which I'm sure he does, right? I mean, that's what he's really good at. The play calling, the scheming on that team is always one of the best in the NFL. Shanahan's going to break out, all his little creative, schemes and play calling. And I'm sure Trey Lance can have a successful round, at least in week one. It's at -7 now. It's a big line. It's on the road, but it's on the, it's a big line like that for a reason. I think they're a great teaser leg, but I would still probably lean towards San Francisco in week one. There's a huge talent disparity there, if nothing else.
Chris, you brought up Kenny Pickett and the Steelers before, and we still don't know who the starting quarterback is, if it's Mitchell Trubisky or if it's Kenny Pickett going into week one at Cincinnati. This is a very intriguing matchup because for years it felt like the Steelers owned the Bengals. Last year, the tables turned. The Bengals had that big win early on in the season in Pittsburgh, and then they blew them out in Cincinnati, and we know what the Bengals did going to the Super Bowl and was winning the Super Bowl. But here's my concern, a couple things here. Number one, Joe Burrow had that appendectomy, and if you've ever had that, I've gone through that, it is a pain in the ass. It is not pleasant, number one. Number two, I know Pittsburgh doesn't have the quarterback decision made, but you got to think those two losses last year in the back of their heads. The Bengals, now the target's on their back. This is no longer they're the last place team that's sneaking up on everybody. What do you think about the Bengals going into this game against Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment there, Kevin. I mean, something tells me, and there's not a lot of evidence behind it for me. I mean, the Bengals do have plenty of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I think we can all say that they probably overperformed a little bit last year. The Bills and the Chiefs going at it in that divisional round. Maybe the Chiefs came into that AFC Conference Championship a little tired, right? A little, maybe underestimating this Bengals team. But you're right. I mean, the target is on this team now, and it blows my mind as bettors, as fans. So many people out there in the industry who watch football, they tend to underestimate the Pittsburgh Steelers. And last year, the same thing happened, right? Week one against the Bills. Sure, there were some fortunate things that happened, special teams and defense, but the Steelers won straight up. I know they're on the road again, but we got +6.5 on the Steelers. This might go up to 7. I don't think it will, but if it does go up to 7, that's a great grab. But even at +6.5, 6 being a key number in the NFL, especially these days with extra points and 2-point conversions and everything that can happen, I love the Steelers at 6.5. This is a Steelers team who, in my opinion, has the best defensive line in the NFL. They have the best depth at defensive line in the NFL. They have a ton of skill players on offense. Now we're seeing Pickens come out. He looks good. He could be a great third or fourth option for the Steelers. I really like the Steelers team. And I know quarterback is a huge question mark. Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, who's going to start? We don't know yet. But I don't know if it matters. I think that they can scheme it well enough where they can make the game come to those quarterbacks easy. It's a good atmosphere for Mitch too. He's a big guy. He's a physical guy. He can throw the ball downfield. They're going to run the ball down Cincinnati's throat with Najee Harris. The Cincinnati Bengals aren't that great, historically at least, last year against the run. This feels like a little bit of a trap for me. We're just assuming that Joe Burrow is going to continue his reign of terror. He's a great player. I love Joe Burrow. But again, I don't have a lot of evidence for it, but I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals are probably going to take a step back. A lot of things went right for them last year.
There was a long stretch, Chris, and I don't have the number in front of me, but there was a long stretch, I believe, in the 2000s and then going to the 2010s where Super Bowl losers week one the next year were not a good play, that you faded them. And last year it was the Chiefs against the Browns in week one that they didn't cover. Remember that line kind of closed, and I don't know if Kansas City got the cover on the closing line, but it was about 5 or 6, and then it turned out Cleveland hung in that game. But I'm just saying Cincinnati, maybe that's a look because of double revenge, Super Bowl loser, everyone's propped them up. But the concern obviously is Pittsburgh with the quarterback position. So we'll see with that. Now, the last game I want to look at, another divisional game. Patriots and the Dolphins in Miami, and Tua Tagovailoa just owns Bill Belichick. I mean, he's never lost to him in his short career. He's 3-0 against him. But Mac Jones in that draft class or last year's draft class, now trying to get back to the playoffs once again after they lost to Buffalo in the first round. What do you think about the Patriots here? They lost in week 18 to the Dolphins last year. Miami now going back to Miami for week 1. Dolphins a short favorite. Do you buy into the Dolphins also with everything they've done, including the Tyreek Hill acquisition?
I buy into the Dolphins long-term, definitely improving on offense. But again, fading public perception is one of the ways that I win in the NFL the most. My co-head of betting at the 33rd team, Ron Reynolds, said, maybe don't talk about that as much because it's kind of a secret of the trade, right? Like trade secrets to NFL betting. But it's easy to like the Miami Dolphins right now, I think. Sorry, I have a fly attacking me over here. They have Tyreek Hill on the team now, Chase Edmonds. I mean, they have a ton of speed, right? Jalen Waddle. But it's the first year with a new head coach, Mike McDaniels. I do think they're going to make some things happen. But Bill Belichick, like you said, if anybody wants to beat Tua at this point, it's probably Bill Belichick. And there's some chatter right now about the Patriots too, right? What's his name? Starting at the offensive coordinator position now. That's weird for the Patriots. A former Lions coach. I always forget that guy's name.
Matt Patricia.
Matt Patricia. He's pretty forgettable for me, Kevin. That's probably why I forget his name. Yeah. But there's a lot of chatter about things like that, right? Mac Jones. Maybe he's having some struggles, but Mac Jones is known for how prepared he is in all these NFL games. He's going to be prepared. He's probably going to be way ahead of their defense. And we have to expect, nobody's talking about the Dolphins defense. If nothing else, they experienced some great years with their former head coach. They're on the Miami Dolphins, and now they're without him, right? So Mike McDaniels and offensive mind, sure. But is that defense going to be able to sustain what it has in the past? If there's pressure on that defense, again, at the start of this year with their new offensive schemes, maybe some nuts and bolts not figured out yet, I don't know. I think the Patriots defense is going to be better than we think. Malcolm Butler went down. That stinks. But the Patriots, and we can't sleep on the Patriots. Since it's at -2.5 for the Dolphins at this point, probably the best play is to take the Patriots money line. There's not a lot of value in 2.5. If the Patriots lose, it's probably going to be by 3. So take a shot at the money line. It's still a pretty good price for the Patriots. I know they're on the road, and I know they usually struggle in Miami, but that's at the end of the year, right? This is at the beginning of the year. The Dolphins aren't going to catch the Patriots by surprise. They have a lot of weeks to prepare for this game, and I think it might be more important to Bill Belichick than we think. So I think the value play is going to be on the Patriots for me in that one.
And before I let you go, I mentioned at the top, you finished 5th in the Circa contest last year. I'm assuming you're back in the Circa contest again this year?
Yeah, I'm actually going to Vegas on Friday and Saturday to enter into the Circa contest once again. Also in Circa Survivor, which I'm pretty excited about because I've never done that before.
All right.
But
So I was going to say a couple things on that. Number one, what was your strategy last year with, I mean, you finished fifth. I mean, you won more than you lost, obviously. But
yeah.
besides that, like, what were you, did you have a partner or were you alone?
Yeah, it was me and my buddy Steve Norman. You could find him at Bobo Bets, BOH Bets on Twitter. One of my best friends and an extremely sharp NFL mind. I could not have done that without Steve, that's for sure. It's tough to talk about our strategy, and it's tough to, I'm not sure how to tell people this because, maybe this is going to take years and years for them to get to this spot. But I think one of the things that helps Steve and I a lot is we've made a ton of mistakes in the past. To be honest with you, we are the guys, we're the bros who would show up to the bar every single Sunday. We'd have about 20 to 30 NFL bets. So picking, in other words, betting way too much, Kevin. So, picking 5 games per week, I'm not saying it's easy. There's nothing easy about Circa, but it was easy for us to filter just 5 games every week because we just made every mistake in the book in the past, investing too much, having too many plays, getting too excited. We know the NFL really well. But I think, Steve and I work really well together because we usually agree on 3 to 4 plays every week. And then it's just trying to figure out that 1 or 2 more plays to put on our Circa card. We're going to have 2 entries this year, and I'm not sure if that's going to help us or not. But I don't know. I think just experience in the industry, maybe making some mistakes, trying new things out. But I will say this, I don't worry about the other contestants. There's some people who go into the contest and like, oh, I have to pick this team maybe because no one else is picking that. I don't worry about that at all. The purpose of Circa, the way to win the contest is to get the highest win percentage, right? And we got a 68% on the year, which is, that's not something that, anybody does in their personal pocket. But when you have to pick 5 games per week, it's easy to trim it down. It's a little bit easier to trim it down at least. And I just think Steve and I really work well together. We play devil's advocate for each other, but we're good at supporting each other as well. So hopefully we can have a repeat performance. I talked to Steve Fezzik a few weeks ago on the Ross Tucker pod, and famous sports bettor Steve Fezzik, and he was telling me that my chances are extremely slim, to place 5th or better again. That's okay. That's the motivation I need, Kevin. So we will see what happens this year. Like I said, entering into the Survivor contest as well. I've won 5 straight local Survivor contests. I'm not sure if that compares to the Circa Survivor contest, but we'll see. Hey, I can make it late into the season, right? So hopefully I can have a repeat performance in that as well.
Before I let you go, quickly on the Survivor, what is that strategy like for you? Because obviously Survivor, you take 1 team a week. And do you look far ahead or do you go with, I got to get through week 1. I don't care who I burn in week 1. I got to get through to week 2 and then so on and so forth. Or you say, well, this team is playing the Jets in week 7. I'm going to save them for that. Or they're playing the Lions in whatever week. Or do you say, let me just get through this week, survive in advance?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you get to the end of Circa this year and you don't use the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl last year, the Bengals and the Rams, then you'll win an extra $1 million. So, that's a big incentive there. I'll try to do that. But yeah, as far as strategy, I've always done it this way. I don't worry that much about what anyone else is doing until a little bit later in the contest. I want to pick winners until about week 8 or week 10. Sometimes I try to forecast, but in general, I just want winners, and I want those winners until at least the first half of the season is over. At that point, okay, now we have to see who's still in the field, what have they picked, then you can start to filter your picks a little bit more. But the reality is, there's 32 teams in the NFL. There's 18 weeks to pick. So yes, at some point you're going to have to pick a pretty crappy team, but I think it's important not to overanalyze or, make perhaps erroneous picks just based on what other people might be doing, to try to be a little sharper than everybody else. In the beginning, you just literally want to survive. And then if you make it a little bit later in the contest, then I start to, forecast and think about my future picks.
Sounds good. And I agree with you on the survive in advance. Just week 1 is so tough because we think we know a lot about these teams from last year, but that's your only evidence is last year, not this year. You get to week 4, you have something to go off of the first few weeks. So just try to get through week 1 and then move on from there. So That sounds like a good plan. Chris Farley, you could find him on Twitter at Farley Bets. He's now part of the 33rd team, at the 33rd team, also on Twitter. And great NFL reference for anybody if you want to bet, if you want to look at just teams, team-by-team breakdown. Chris has done a lot of work with that. He's the head of betting for that. So, Chris, we appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again soon. And best of luck in the contest as well.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Can't wait to be back. Let's go NFL, man. I'm excited.
All right, that is Chris Farley, and we appreciate him hopping on the show. And yeah, a lot of good information from him. Number 5 in the circa last year, 68%. That's crazy. It really is. But you know, it always goes back to that argument too. We get to the baseball bets of the night coming up in just a moment. But you know, you say to yourself, all right, you want to work with a partner or do you want to work alone? I've always wanted to work alone on this, simply for this reason, that if you work with someone else and if for whatever reason and everyone's got different ways of doing it, it's 5 selections. If you say, okay, I'm going to do 2, you do 2, and let's have a consensus for the 5th one. If they go 2-0, you go 0-2, and then you win the other one, and then again that happens, you say, well, what am I here for? You're the one that's winning all the games, so I'm just going to say, I like to do it alone. Let's see how it goes. Of course, there are people that have 5 people per team or per entry, and the contests are $1,000 entries. So you split it with someone, it's $500 bucks a piece. But still, it is very, very interesting to see how people go about this. And Chris, obviously, very accomplished with his picks in the circa. All right, let's now take a look at Major League Baseball. We talked a lot of NFL so far. We're down to the wire, so we got to get to some Major League Baseball for tonight. Last night, for our best bets, we went 1-1. We lost with the Pirates, 2-1 defeat to the Braves. They were heavy home underdogs, and they were right there, but unfortunately, they couldn't get over the hump. But we did win with the Marlins in the late-night game against the Athletics in front of 2,600 people at the Coliseum, which I saw online, which I think that is wrong because I saw it on TV. There's about 27 people scattered in the seats. But we won with the Marlins. They shut out the A's. So 1-1, broke even. All right, we move on. All right, tonight we have 2 interleague games we're going to look at. And the first one, the Diamondbacks and the Royals, they meet in Kansas City. And Arizona beat Kansas City twice this year back at Chase Field. And I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks here as my best bet. And Zach Davies takes the mound for Arizona. He has struggled from the standpoint of they have not been able to get back-to-back wins with Davies on the mound. He's coming off a win at San Francisco his last time out. He's an up-and-down pitcher. Arizona should be focused tonight. They just got swept at home by St. Louis, and the Royals are off of a win in a makeup game yesterday against the White Sox at home. Jonathan Heasley starts for Kansas City. The Royals are 0-5 in his last 5 starts. I like the Diamondbacks as my first best bet for tonight. Now, my second best bet is going to be another interleague game. It's the Rangers and the Rockies in Colorado, and that's at Coors Field tonight. Rangers, they took 3 or 4 from the Twins this past weekend. They won the final game last night. Texas is 7-3 the last 10. They're playing better. Probably not a playoff team, but they had the managerial change. They're playing a little bit better of late. Colorado took 2 of 3 from San Francisco. We're going to go with the Rangers here as a short road underdog. Now, Dane Dunning, who has been a guy that you want to fade on the road, Rangers are 1-10 in his 11 road starts this year. But Texas is 4-0 in his last 4 starts, so he's starting to turn it around. Might as well ride that tide with him. German Marquez starts for Colorado. He's another up-and-down pitcher. I think we decided to go with all up-and-down pitchers tonight. But we're going to go with the Texas Rangers as our second best bet for this evening. And I'm going to throw an extra one out there. I know we don't have the graphic for it, but just there's one extra one I want to throw out is the Padres. I think they beat the Guardians tonight at home. And Mike Clevenger goes against his old team. San Diego's had some struggles since that Juan Soto trade. Cleveland leads the AL Central. I think San Diego, that line has dropped because there's a lot of money on the Padres, but that number has dropped. And Cleveland, they've gotten a lot of credit for what they've done. They played very well. I think this is a good night for the Padres to come out and play well. So that's kind of a bonus pick for tonight in Major League Baseball. Now let's look at our props. Let's prop it up with our strikeout props for tonight. And last night I told you The two top strikeout pitchers were Max Scherzer and Julio Urias. And I said in both of those, maybe split going over on them because they were both heavily juiced to the under. Scherzer stayed under against the Yankees, but Urias went over against Milwaukee. So that strategy kind of worked. Now, the two pitchers with the highest strikeout totals tonight in Major League Baseball, it's Carlos Rodon and Corbin Burns. We'll start with Rodon of the Giants. They are in Detroit tonight to take on the Tigers, and that number at 7.5. You see on the screen there, over -120. And Rodon leads Major League Baseball in strikeouts this year. This is not going to be a best bet of mine. Just wanted to mention who the top strikeout prop pitchers are. And obviously, Rodon is normally at 7.5, 8.5. Tonight he's at 7.5 against the Tigers. You know, the Giants, that they've struggled. This is not exactly the team that won over 100 games from last year. So Carlos Rodon is one of those pitchers at 7.5. The second pitcher at 7.5 is Corbin Burns. And Corbin Burns of the Brewers, he won the Cy Young last year. He has been still very good for Milwaukee. Brewers, Dodgers tonight, our best bet on that. Let's put it up. We're going to go with the over on Corbin Burns. And I think that Corbin Burns strikeout 7.5. He had 6 his last time out against the Dodgers. They just faced each other in Milwaukee, in fact. But now that total at 7.5. He's 3-1 to the under his last 4 starts, Corbin Burns. 2 of those that he hit the under on were 8.5 totals. Now he's down to 7.5. I think Burns got a good shot here. He's a big strikeout pitcher. We talk about Rodon as far as leading Major League Baseball in strikeouts. Burns is up there as well. He's a top 3 strikeout pitcher. We're going to go with Corbin Burns over strikeouts as our first strikeout prop for tonight. Now let's look at the second strikeout prop, and that is in the White Sox-Orioles game. They meet up in Baltimore, and the Orioles right in the wild card hunt. I mean, both teams, big game for the wild card for both these teams. Chicago, you would have felt like they would have been more of a division champion. Baltimore's a last place team, but that's not the case. The White Sox are trying to chase the Twins and Guardians in the Central and also for a wild card spot. And Baltimore's right in the wild card race as well. And Dylan Cease, who is one of the Cy Young favorites in the American League, he's starting for Chicago tonight. And his total's at 6.5. We're going to go under on his total this evening. And also, I love those uniforms, those Southside uniforms. They look so good. But Dylan Cease, that number's at 6.5. He's 4-1 to the under his last 5 starts. He did strike out 12 against Baltimore the last time he faced them back in late June in 7 innings of work. But this time around, I'm going to go with the plus money on him. It was at plus 110 earlier today. It's now at plus 105. I think that Cease will stay under the total. His strikeout totals have dropped a little bit of late. He still has great numbers overall, but the strikeout totals are not as high. So we're going to go with Dylan Cease under 6.5, Corbin Burns over 7.5. Those are 2 props for tonight. I forgot to tell you what I did last night. Splitsville. We hit on Domingo Germán. He stayed under his strikeout total against the Mets. I mean, there was 1 strikeout, too. That was kind of BS that was on the little bit outside. But regardless, it still went under the total against the Mets. Jordan Montgomery, we were off on him last night. He has been unbelievable since going to the St. Louis Cardinals from the Yankees. He got traded at the deadline, and the Yankees sure could use him now. I mean, depending on the Yankees' offense is more the problem as opposed to their pitching. But Montgomery has been great, complete game 1 hitter for the Cardinals last night. And then today the Cubs bounced back and beat St. Louis 2-0. That was the first of a doubleheader at Wrigley Field. But Montgomery went over his strikeout total. He had 8 and 8 his previous 2. I think he had 6 last night. The total was 4.5. So lost on that one. So 1-1 in the sides, 1-1 in the strikeout props. Now we'll try to hit 2-0s tonight. So we'll see how that goes. And also a couple other games really quick just to mention in Major League Baseball. I mean, you got a lot of heavy favorites tonight. Braves, a heavy favorite against the Pirates. Phillies against the Reds. Toronto, Boston's interesting from Fenway Park. Justin Verlander's laying $3, over $3 against the Twins. And you got a lot of interleague action tonight. You also have Mets, Yankees continuing in the Bronx. Taijuan Walker and Frankie Montes. The Yankees are favored there. You got Washington and Seattle. Robbie Ray's a heavy favorite. So you wonder with the likes of Ray, Rodon, Verlander, You got a lot of big favorites. Ranger Suarez over $2, Max Fried over $2, nearly $3. So you wonder, out of those pitchers, who is going to stub their toe tonight? And just wondering who it's going to be. You have a lot of guys that are heavy favorites in big mismatches. I mean, Tony Gonsolin has been unbelievable this year. Corbin Burns won the Cy Young, and he's a plus 135 underdog tonight against the Dodgers. So that tells you a lot. But Milwaukee had a really good win over LA last night, and Milwaukee was awful in that Cubs series this past weekend. They couldn't hold any leads in that series against Chicago, so they bounced back. Bring me back on. So just to be honest with everyone on this, the camera just burned out, so that's why we dropped off. You like to talk about technical difficulties. This is the backup camera, so that's why we and you can see the what we have behind us. So the good news is at least we're still online, which is good. I like to be honest with the audience and tell you what happened. So that's what happened, and at least the good news is it came towards the end of the show. So basically, before we get out of here, we have a couple things to go over, and then we will exit gracefully, which is all we can really do. But I want to tell you about some hot handicappers at Vegas Insider. So let's pull that up really fast, because last night we brought up a couple of handicappers, and you see there Kevin Thomas, one of the new handicappers. He's 8-1 in his 9 picks, his last 9 picks in the NFL. Also, Paul Bovey, who's going to join the show coming up on Friday. Paul is an extremely accomplished NFL handicapper, and he's been with Vegas Insider a very long time. He is going to join us. Paul is on a 7-2 run so far in the preseason, and Paul is going to be with us Friday night, and we'll discuss some NFL, not only preseason picks, but also his thoughts on the upcoming NFL season. And in Major League Baseball, a couple of the hot handicappers, see AAA Sports, 8-0 run the last 8 for them. And Reno Johnny, who has been the leader of Major League Baseball this year, he's on a 9-2 run, nearly 7 units that he has picked up over the last week or so. He's been very good, and his Baltimore Orioles playing very well also. So check them out. Go to the Buy Picks page at Vegas Insider, and you can find the handicapper of your preference, either any of the handicappers on fire. There's a great list of who's been picking well of late. And also there's a list of games. So if there's a particular game that you want to that you want to bet on, and you see a handicapper on it, then you know what, you can take a shot with them. So go to our Major League Baseball Buy Picks page at Vegas Insider. Also NFL for the preseason, and you can be all set for your picks for the night. So check that out at our Buy Picks page at Vegas Insider. So before we get out of here, I want to tell you again about Bet365, and Bet365, a great sports book And what they have is an offer that is really good for new users. That Bet365 Sportsbook is offering an exclusive bonus. Customers can bet $1 and get $200 in free bets. So that is what they could do at Bet365. And users must use the code NJVIP at signup and be located in a legal betting state where Bet365 is licensed. It's also for new users only, and full terms and conditions apply. That is for Bet365. So check them out today. All right, Mike, thanks to Chris Farley for hopping on the show with us. You can find him at Farley Bets on Twitter. And also my thanks to Spencer Ray. A great job running the show again, even with our backup camera here. But we'll be back with you tomorrow. Kyle Hunter is going to join the show. And Kyle was the leader in college football last year as far as units won on Vegas Insider. Great totals player as far as college football goes. So Kyle's going to join us tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.